Okay, what we're going to do is I put together some questions based on some of the topics that were covered today. I really prefer not asking questions. I would prefer that y'all ask questions. Y'all ask questions as opposed to me. But I did want to take a short survey here. How many people have a Twitter account? Okay, keep your hands up. How many people tweet? Okay, interesting. Okay, there's more audience participation. How many people pay your bills online? Keep your hands up. How many people still get printed bills? Yeah. That was for you. So, okay, you can put your, and by the way, I think the biggest growth area, if anybody wants to be a printer in the whole industry, is mailing out for colleges. So if anybody's ever had a child that was going to college, yeah, me too. My daughter, the SATs came out, the ACTs came out, and she gets 3 to 4 pieces of mail every day. And nice, we're talking nice pieces of direct mail. So unfortunately, most of those are in-house, however, I guess. But anyway, which brings me to my first question. We talked about there being less mail. And I told you I had a presentation on, I think mail's going to make a comeback, but that's for another day. What impact do you think information overload has on the whole e-delivery and mail and how we communicate and that type of thing? Since you have the microphone, Michael.
I got to go first?
Or you can pass it down. There you go. It's a planned question.
Yeah. Say it one more time so I can formulate my answer as you're talking.
Well, it's kind of an off, and I know none of these questions are staged
Right.
and all that. I think in an age of information overload, people are getting more and more digital messages and that type of thing, which is, at the point where I think people are getting tired of it, and they may be looking at other alternatives like print or video or other type of media.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, so I think what we're seeing, again, is that information overload. It's so easy to send a blanket email to everybody or a text to everybody. So I think, we see it in the Postal Service, it loses its value. And so, just internally, we talk a lot about how do we reach our own employees. I can email them all, but what if I wrote them a handwritten note? The power that simple handwritten note has.
Talking about using a manual word process.
Yes. I mean, I send birthday cards to my staff, and I write them out. And the power of that simple gesture in trying to get, so when the research tells us, and again, I'm not a marketing expert, but as I sit in the marketing meetings in our sales workforce, it's how do you reach that consumer? And so as somebody try to demonstrate in my presentation that tactile feel, there's doctors that study that and what influence that has on actually getting that physical mail piece. Macy's partner, I'm not a Macy's person, I don't shop there, we don't have one in Omaha, but Macy's is a big partner with us because they found that their consumers, they want to see something. So they're using the hell out of informed delivery. And that coupon, so somebody's at work today, they get their email or their text at 8:30 that says, hey, I got a coupon for Macy's, or I can stop in tonight before I go home. So I think I see vendors searching for how do I get out of that noise of just routine messages. How many of you get messages now where it says you got the little thing you have to try to find unsubscribe in the smallest possible font just to figure out where it's at because you don't want that anymore.
That's my new button, favorite button.
Yeah, so, because I get a lot, I'm on a lot because I want to keep up, but I know I'm getting rid of that thing. But again, I'm real parochial on this, but when I come home and I have a physical mail piece, and I'm a catalog guy. I like a catalog. I like a catalog physically in my hands. So again, I agree with you, Skip. I'd like to see, I think mail hasn't gone away. In the 90s, when I was growing up in the company, we were told, oh, well, you guys are done. Email is going to take over the world and you're going to go out of business. Well, here we are, 2019, and we're still $70 billion.
I was trying to remember, there was a recent study around, everybody always assumes demographics are, that's going to control whether it's those of us that are a little older that want paper and then the younger generation wants digital. And there was a recent one that was done, and I'm going to be off a little bit, but there was 3 percentage points difference between print and E in the millennial age group. So I think there's a mistake around assuming that younger people automatically went digital, to your point. Yeah. And all of us are probably in the same boat. We get, 100 plus emails a day. Last thing I want to do is go on and check more emails. And paper's pushed, it shows up, it reminds me to pay, it sits on the countertop for a long time until it's due. And so it's just kind of that ease and convenience, which I think what everybody wants. Yeah. It's like a sense of importance, it's like it's mail to me.
It's gonna make a comeback, I'm telling you.
I don't know, that might be overreaching.
But at the same time, you have to text her to tell her you sent her an email, right? Get on your email.
We call that
So-
important delivery.
So Skip, back to your question about whether information overload is going to have an impact. I don't know so much that it's information overload, because I think millennials and a lot of people in our industry certainly can multitask and instantaneously prioritize what's junk and what's not junk. I think the important ingredient in why mail is attractive to millennials, certainly, even Google in there is using direct mail. If you think about that, that's kind of blows your mind. It's personalization. If you can do a good job of personalization, you will cut through the noise. If you deliver the right message at the right time and it's relevant, then it's going to get through, I think, regardless of whether it's mail or whether it's email or whether it's a text. Immediacy and personalization are really, really big. The nice thing about mail is it is also tactile, to your point earlier. Tactile is good. People like feeling things. People like dimensional mail. And I think that lifts mail as a channel in a lot of people's eyes.
That's it? Okay. Well, going along those lines then, preference management. We didn't talk much about preference management and in terms of workflow and onboarding and all that type of thing. It seems that that's a critical component of CCM and CX. When we're going through all of these onboarding and changes and stuff, where does that fit into the whole process, or can it fit in anywhere? I think people wait too long to ask me what I'd like to receive, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think preference management, obviously, from just purely technical, can come from a consumer going to a web service and signing up for it to, determine how they want to pay their bill, or the corporation itself can make that decision or have their own preference management and pass those preferences on to whoever's doing the communication for that, end user. But I also think there's, when you look at preference management, it's not just really preference management that you may offer as a service for certain services, but there's other preferences that the end user can use, like Bitmo payment, where they can pay their, I know my son, can send money to his friend to pay the utility bill, and that's a whole transaction that's not even, within our process, They can set up notifications on these apps that allow them to pay these, alternative payment methods that we don't even know, that we didn't even talk about today or address in some of these payment offerings. So I think preference management is really still based on what the customer wants to do and how they want to do it, and there's different modes that allow them to do it in that may not necessarily be in your offering. So, just my opinion.
We see preference management as a significant issue across the whole organization, both operationally, organizationally, and technologically, right? There's a couple companies we track that actually provide preference management services, but very low adoption, right? So you've got organizational issues because you've got multiple lines of business, everybody's kind of doing their own thing with varying degrees of success. Operationally, it's not plugged in well to any of the channels for delivery. Probably the people that do it best are the banks, right? Think about your bank. They usually ask you for preference on email or SMS, and you give them a primary and secondary contact information. And so they've got good access, but they've built those systems internally a decade ago. Insurance companies are not good. I don't know if any of the phone companies are very good. It's just a big gap in the whole market, and I think that's something that we're going to probably hear more about coming up.
Preferences is a subject that's very, very near and dear to the heart of the people at Crawford Technologies. What a lot of companies don't consider when building or trying to build or adopt preference management is that preference management is a way to avoid exception processing and exception handling. If you give people the opportunity to identify how they'd like to receive certain things, how they'd like to be contacted, whatnot, you weren't surprised in customer service by bizarro requests because you give people some granularity. If you look at the companies that do it well, Discover does it well, USAA does it well. These are in-house brewed systems. They aren't systems that Salesforce brought to them or somebody else that does CRM brought to them. But even then, they're not granular enough. I mean, think about the types of documents that you receive from the people you do business with. If it's a bank, you may have a checking account relationship with them. You may have a savings account relationship with them. You may have a car loan with them. You may have gotten a mortgage. You may have gotten all of those things or none of those things. There's marketing information related to those. There are statements and correspondence and things like that. Let's face it, you may want to get your statements on paper. You want to keep them for perpetuity. You want to have them as a reminder to pay a bill. But marketing stuff you might want to get via email. I can't think of a single vendor out there that allows that type of granularity, but the technology exists to allow that. And I think that if companies would realize that operationally they can improve their customer experience and they can improve the way that they do things simply by being more granular in the preferences that they offer to their customers, they'd be a lot farther down the path. That's a great question, and what we've found in dealing with them.
Disagree on this, so go ahead.
No, what we've
I have a feeling we're going to disagree.
no what we found in our experience in the marketplace is that many organizations want to keep preferences inside, okay, and then when they use the preferences to break down their files to go to the various channels for fulfillment, they want to hand that control file off to the print service provider. There are print service providers that are customers of ours that want to offer preference management as a service on behalf of their customers because they know that their customers can't get out of their own way when it comes to getting enough budget to do it right.
They are very siloed. Yeah. Right.
That's correct.
But they built it where we think is where it belongs, is next to the customer data. That's where it ultimately belongs. It doesn't often reside there, but that's where it belongs.
you're saying it's more of a two-way communication. It's more of a. And in some cases, a one-way.
It's really all the information that sits out there based on what you're doing on your device. I mean, it's really kind of artificial intelligence from a preference management standpoint. We see that, and you probably even see it where you were thinking about something, and all of a sudden, you may have just did something on the website and went and looked at something, and all of a sudden you're getting emails about that particular topic.
Right, perhaps you are. You can't, it is a different animal. It is.
I think when you sign up, you have to ask those questions.
I
Yeah.
think you have to ask those questions, but then just take Verizon, for instance. I started receiving my bill in the mail, just like always. And then immediately when I started, I was late one day, I was paying my bill, it was like the due date, and my wife was on my butt to get it paid, and I forgot twice or 2 or 3 times, or I had selected listening, whatever. And I ended up with this, I ended up going to pay it on the phone. It was the quickest thing I could do to pay that bill, just to get it done and get my wife off my back. Well, all of a sudden I started receiving emails saying, well, we'll give you a discount on your bill if you pay online or do auto pay. And so I was like, oh, and so I set up auto pay, which was a convenient way, but they were watching what I was doing and said, hey, we know you can do it on, pay it through the phone. Why don't you move to this delivery channel? So there's different ways that they're trying to drive your preferences as well, not just the one that you initially choose, which I choose paper. Now, the funny thing was I chose auto pay. I never selected to stop receiving my bill in the mail, but I stopped receiving my bill in the mail.
Did you get hit for a late fee for paying late?
No, I paid on time. I paid on that day that it was due. My wife is an accountant.
Yeah.
They always say, if you do this, we'll plant a tree.
No.
They gave me a discount for doing setting up auto pay.
But the other
and I
thing,
don't have to worry
the
about
other
it.
smart thing that Verizon's done is drive the behavior of not mailing in a check. So the remit is not on page 1 anymore, which why we still do that as an organization boggles the mind. Everybody knows how to pay by a check, and that remit will be there somewhere if you really have to do it. But using that key real estate and driving bad behavior starts with the navigation.
You're already in there. That slows
Yeah,
down.
Yeah.
for sure. I was going to say granularity and asking people for preferences, I think, should still be the responsibility of all organizations, particularly when it comes to accessibility. We have a lot of people who are blind or partially sighted that work in our organization in QA, believe it or not, testing to make sure that what we produce in terms of Braille and large print is actually usable and meets standards. But if you're blind and you have to call customer service and request a copy of your statement in Braille, it would be really nice if there was some way that that organization could save that as a preference for you so you didn't have to do it every single month, and every single month for 12 vendors. And that's the reality that these people go through, And if the websites were accessible, they could go online, use their screen readers or their Braille note takers, whatever assistive technology there is, and specify what they wanted without having to disclose to customer service in the world, I'm blind, I need help. And saying over the phone, oh, I'll read your statement to you, is not a real winning customer experience strategy either. But a lot of companies put their CSRs in that position because they don't know what to do. And there's no way for that customer to specify their preferences. So having a robust way of dealing with customer choice seems like a damn good idea to me.
And I'll throw in something, we don't use that term the way you use it, but in our dealing with the customer experience, anybody familiar with Lean Six Sigma at all? Okay, so we did a project in our company dealing with customer complaints, and we get a few customer complaints, just a few. Our district is actually one of the best in the country, but what we found is we ask a customer, if you contacted us with a complaint, either emailed us, called us, however you got us the complaint, we ask for your preference. How do you want us to get back to you? Quite often, folks will give us a text, Say text us or email us. What we found in our study and actually work in the process is even though you said that, you really prefer having a human call you. So our best performing offices that deal with complaints by a significantly statistically valid margin were those managers and supervisors that actually called you, even though you said, send me an email, actually called you and said, here's the situation, I'm working on finding the package, I think I know where it is, and so on and so forth. So, and they're already unhappy because they complained. But the satisfaction that we drove by just talking to them as a human moved us to #1 in the country out of 67 districts in dealing with complaining customers, for what that's worth.
People out here evidently answer the phone. But other parts of the country, they don't answer the phone, so.
We had 82 million complaints a year to our call center.
Is that all?
In all 67 districts, right?
That's the nation.
I was gonna say,
Not my district.
okay.
I get about 50, I get about 50-ish, excuse me, 500 a week.
500.
My 4 million customers.
People need to get a life. They really do.
Where's my back? Where's my back?
So, since we were talking about telephone bills and other bills and stuff, I was thinking, when you were talking about print suppression, are these companies shooting themselves in the foot by pushing print suppression in terms of the whole overall customer experience? It's like they're shoving it down your throat. Do you think it's kind of too aggressive, or why are you giving me the evil eye?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, I would say I don't think they're pushing print suppression as much as they're pushing postage suppression, right? They'd love to mail, they just don't like the cost. And so I think, well, they appreciate the second and third ounce for free. And they've been very poor, the whole remember the Trans Promo Summit? The Trans Promo thing was going to dynamically change the way we mail, and then that didn't happen. So some companies are still struggling with getting the insert onto the statement. There's some good examples. I think our friends at CSGU left have some good examples of that, but for the most part, people aren't taking advantage of that, and throwing extra pages in the document for the same postage rate. So that if you could do that well, you're less incented to turn off the mail.
Rick, are you seeing an increase in the second and third out?
I just don't have any insight into that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when that came out, I thought it was a giveaway. Like you just mentioned, who wouldn't take advantage of this if it was still a market?
We lose a little bit on every envelope, but we make it up in volume.
I think the only thing you have to think about is it's not just around that cost, right? So how are they paying? Most people will pay by credit cards because they want the points if they're paying digitally. So what's the cost of the organization for that, right? So I think it's, again, mailing a check and the lockbox fees and all that are expensive as well. But I think it's more the whole, what does it cost down each channel, both print and payment? And comparing those two from an organizational perspective on which way you drive it. But I don't disagree. I mean, from an impact perspective and staying in the house longer, I don't think anybody would disagree that there's nothing better than a paper bill. Yeah. Yeah. I think it greatly varies by vertical. I mean, I hate to take that as a,
Yeah, one of the goals or enablers for great customer experience, if you read all the CX research that's out there, is having a quote-unquote 360-degree view of your customer. So you want to know what their intent is. You want to know what their surfing behavior is. You want to know what they click on, right? All those types of things. Little anecdote about the company I was talking about earlier that did the, smart onboarding. 46 lines of business. Who do you think owns the customer lists? Not the corporation, the lines of business. So they have no centralized list of all their insurance customers, except for one place. In the print shop, or in the print shops, but consolidated one, in the print shop, because they have to do all the mail sorting, and they ship the files to BCC and get them back. So they at least have an accurate list and address on all their insurance customers. It's the only place in the entire organization where that exists.
Nobody saw that as a problem?
No one saw that as a problem. So we started talking to them about preferences and preference management. And my contact, our contact running this project said, I don't even know who we would go to talk to in our organization, but I'm figuring it's 3 or 4 levels above my head, and I don't know what it would take to get their attention.
Make a decision.
Right. So I'm assuming that they're not the only insurance company like that.
Aren't you really just creating an AI instance of your own? I mean, you're basically. Well, some would say, I think AI is another path of getting the data to understand what the preferences are to drive the communication to the customer. I think that, and then there's the self-service aspect of you as a corporation getting that information from your customer. And I think as AI becomes more sophisticated with the preferences, you'll see more of that where that decision's being made for you based on your previous selections. But I think those things are already being done by Google and some of these big companies that are IBM, Watson, and those places that are collecting all that kind of data based on what you're doing online. To where I wouldn't even attempt to build my own system other than just get the preferences from my customer when I'm able to, and bounce it off of those preferences. As it's kind of like the end user journey, and the journey could be I start here today down this channel, but I may move to another channel, just like I did when I used the example of Verizon. I started down on the paper channel just for a very short amount of time, went to the IVR channel, and then they moved me based on them seeing my activity. And they're large enough to do that kind of thing, but smaller companies aren't. So the Google aspect may be an idea, or IBM Watson, or if they can access that data. But I think that trying to build it yourself is, and those algorithms and trying to keep it updated is a challenge for many corporations. They can't even get out of their own way today. They can't even get out of their own way today in trying to just how they communicate and fill the ounce. I mean, because you got the lines of businesses that are so fragmented, to try to get them to agree on something like that, I think would be a challenge too in some of the larger enterprises.
You done now? I would agree. When I get my mail, I use my bank bill pay for a lot of my mail, my bills. So when I get the bill, I still get the paper bill, and I open it up, and the first thing I see is the BRE. I'm like, come on, guys. You're not even trying, right? You know I pay electronically. So if they can't get out of their way to fix that problem, there's no chance they're going to build anything more sophisticated. And that's an easy one, right? Simple flag you send down, suppress that selection.
Yeah, the short answer to your question is yes, that would be a great way of applying AI to a problem that is vexing for a lot of organizations. At the Explore Toronto event that we had, there was actually a presentation by our friends from MessagePoint specifically about applying AI, to some of the problems that we encounter in personalization and understanding behaviors and whatnot. Building the model, I think, could be done reasonably well. I think that the model, particularly if you have a lot of customers, could be fleshed out pretty easily, and you could probably come up with some pretty interesting algorithms to augment preference management. I think what's missing first is a commitment on the organizations to actually want to use preferences, okay, to respect preferences, to actually want to collect information about their customers and not just pay lip service to collecting information about their customers. Once we're there, technology has great answers.
It's a good question.
United States really exempt that, but I mean, Europe and the rest of the world takes privacy a lot more seriously
Yeah.
than the United States. Someplace along the way, someone will eventually say, Facebook, you can't do this anymore. You can't read all my emails.
For sure. And ultimately, we're going to end up with something like GDPR for the United States that will define those things. I mean, the basic premises of GDPR are pretty far-reaching, but it's all based on double opt-in. You have to opt in to every time somebody wants to use your data. You have to willingly give it up and give them permission to use it. And at any given time, you can say, no, you can't use it anymore. We don't have that same sort of system. Interestingly enough, just read an article, and I wish I could remember who published it, a couple of weeks ago, saying that people in the United States, unlike people elsewhere in the world, are willing to give up personal information for perks. Give me the right incentive, give me the right coupon, give me the right perk, and I'll spill my guts.
Again, I think it's how you use your system. I mean, that's why you see those preppers and people off the grid and all that. They don't, they're really not that bad.
Pretty close to here.
Yeah. So you should once in a while, just everybody, you should go out and Google your own name and see what comes up. Google yourself, because there's a lot of information that you probably are not aware of just on the public domains that is out there on you, and then of course the black web or dark web, and But again, all these companies are collecting, I mean, when we talk about Google AI, that Google AI or what Watson's doing and some of these other groups, I mean, they're collecting that information off of what you're doing on the internet, every time you click a button, anytime you accept cookies off of a website. I mean, all that is pushing information from your system to other systems to collect that data. So, I mean, that's how that works. And so, and you've actually gave them permission, so even if you could opt in, opt out, or double opt, you would probably, again, for the perk or for whatever it is that you're trying to get, you're gonna allow it to happen. So,
Ever, thing that says, hey, your email address, your whatever is showed up in some website,
yeah.
The point is you can't protect people from themselves. We're trying.
Any other comments on, oh, we beat that one to death. Yeah, I know. I didn't think it would carry that far. I like the AI conversation though, so. One of the things we were talking about all of these preferences and what companies can do and what companies don't do. We had a lot of discussion today about PSPs and about onboarding and that type of thing. If you look at companies in general, do you see more outsourcing or people going to PSPs or more people, you talked about a little bit this morning, Kemal, more people going in versus going out? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we hardly see anybody bringing work back in. We used to have a top 100 implant list. I think it's down now to 78, so they keep filtering out. Eventually, I think, it's hard for me to understand how anybody can survive anymore internally. I think, it's going to be a, kind of like print suppression, it's going to be a long, slow decline. But it's going to be, even the big guys like we talked about, Bank of America, who's got, like Fidelity recently outsourced, as did Wells. Wells was actually bringing third-party work in-house, right? So they were effective and costly enough they could bring work in and charge for it, compete with the Fiservs and Teresa. But even then they decided, we're going to shut this down and outsource it. They had 3 key sites. So it's just harder and harder for people to justify the cost, especially when there comes up for like a significant CapEx refresh. Somebody within senior management looks at it and goes, is this really the business we're in? So I think eventually I don't see how anybody will be able to stay in-house.
I was going to say, we see a lot of outsourcing in terms of the print and fulfillment.
Right.
But we also see people wanting to keep the control of the IP, the actual composition, in-house, or they'll outsource it to a managed service provider to do that work for them. It's like they don't want to let go of the entire enchilada because they don't want to be locked in at all. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Teresa hasn't convinced them that they can do both without being locked in.
Exactly. Duh.
She's working on it.
No, yeah.
Mind control already.
No, I totally agree. I mean, we continue to see small in-house shops, especially in the FI space, don't want to do it anymore. They don't want to, that's not their core. They don't want to buy printers and inserters when they can spend that money on machine learning, cool stuff. So, yeah, we continue to see that market compress.
Yeah, from a RICO standpoint, when we go into customers, I mean, we're in one right now. It's a large customer. They have a small in-house print shop, and they're trying to decide which direction to go. And we basically have made the recommendation to them because they are really, really, really bad at it, that they should outsource.
They
I
don't
mean
seem to
that.
care, though. We say the same thing.
No, well, we say it, and
Earl's been down there in the basement running that printer for 30 years. He knows what he's doing.
And what if
Listen, it ain't broke? Just leave that alone.
And then Earl announces next week that he's going to retire, and then they're like, ugh. And that's what's happening. I mean, more of the small, 2-3 cut sheet devices, a couple of inserters, small inserters, barely getting enough, they're not even getting a huge postal discount because the pre-sort providers, taking a lot from, because their volume just doesn't dictate, and their volume keeps declining. Some people are stubborn enough to think that they can keep it in-house, but I agree. Some of the small to mid-size people that don't do it right, and that's really not their core. I mean, we're pushing them to outsource because it's really, from a customer standpoint, it's the right thing to do. Now we push them to outsource to our customer base that buys our printers and stuff, of course. But again, that's what we're doing. It's not, if they're really, really good, we'll recommend keep it, and here's, do these tweaks, buy some software, do this. But we're saying outsource more than we are insourcing these days. So, which is sad, but it is the case.
Do you think one of the driving factors of the outsourcing is, all the changes in, compliance and regulations and that type of thing, taking that from the enterprise into a print service provider who's probably better equipped? And there's cost to doing that, obviously. Do you think that's a big driving force for people to outsource also?
I think volume is a big reason. That cost per piece is, obviously boils down to cost per piece, and then it's becoming a bigger number on the income statement. And I think at the end of the day, people are asking, why are we doing this? Why this is not our core? I think that's the key. And when you see that number, I'm spending how much on print and mail and all this, and who the heck is Earl? And why is Earl doing this? And I think that's what drives a lot of it. So.
Yeah, there's two reasons, Skip. There's cost drivers, and the other one is philosophical. We're getting out of business.
I basically agree with both these guys to a certain extent. I think one of the big drivers, though, is human overhead. The cost of keeping employees, the cost of benefits, those types of things. If I'm out of the business, if I decide that I no longer want to print, not only do I get to unplug all those printers and the maintenance that go along with them, but I'm going to unplug, X amount of permanent employees, or I'm going to redeploy them in my organization in something maybe that has more value. But if I let them go, I no longer have benefits to pay, I no longer have salaries to pay, and those are big costs. I mean, we see all the time that people are letting 10,000 employees go as a realignment of their workforce, reorganization of the workforce. That they may be making money hand over fist, but they're preparing for the next level. And there are a lot of insurance companies and banks and other major implants that have gotten to the point saying, wow, printing is hard work. What are we doing it for? And then they start running the numbers and they realize, we can give this to FIS, we can give it to Pfizer, we can give it to Broadridge, whomever.
Pfizer.
And
Pfizer.
yeah, Pfizer, I said Pfizer. Yeah. I said, I said Pfizer second. I was very nice. I can't be a homer,
I think compliance too is driving it. So when there's a HIPAA violation, that's one of the things that goes straight up to the office of the president. I know, I used to get those calls. And if somebody double stuffs, it's a big problem, big fines now. Those are driving, why are we doing this? Why don't we go to people that really know what they're doing and have the right equipment and the technology to drive it? And I think that the compliance is driving a lot of that outsourcing as well. So, sorry, I would be remiss if I didn't say compliance.
The people who know what they're doing.
We tend to forget or underscale the partnership. So, everybody knows how the paper craziness happened last year, right? If you weren't of size and scale to manage through that, you were having a hard time calling your buddy at the mill to say, hey, I need another roll of paper. So I think we're starting to see that side of the equation. I always call the USPS our BFF. So again, good to be in lockstep partnership with them. But if you're a small guy and you may not have that seat at the table or those relationships, that's hard to keep it going.
works is I get an email, and I can go sit down at my computer, fire it up, log on to a Blue Cross site, and look at my EOB. Conversely, I can pull it out of mail.
That's a lot of steps.
And by the time I get to the front door, I've opened it, made up my mind what I want to do with it, and throw it away or save it. So how are we going to get better acceptance?
Stop mailing them.
You know, I'll tell you one thing that just drives me nuts is the fact that we have all these e-delivery initiatives going on within organizations, and no one or very few people deliver documents or content, was a better name, in a mobile-ready format. Okay, I can go to my banking sites, pick any one you want. I can get my statement. I can look at it. They're going to send me a frickin' PDF. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to squint, and I'm going to pinch on my mobile device. I'm going to get frustrated because it's such a pain in the rear end, and I'll say, I'll open it up when I get home. And guess what? Chances are I don't open it up when I get home. And 30 days later, when I'm cleaning out all the crap that's on my mobile device because I'm running out of memory, what do you think happens to it? With about 50,000 other PDFs, they all get jettisoned, right? Why not give somebody who's using a mobile device a mobile-ready format, like responsive HTML5?
Kind of like what I
It's,
said earlier?
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly the point. It's one of the things that we push in some of the platforms that we have. It's you have the ability. Pardon me?
How's the protection side of that? Because that's the issue, right? We can't send anything in email.
No, you don't. Okay, but you can redirect. You can do two-factor authentication, which is a pain in the butt at times. But the reality is there are ways to skin that cat. For you to prove who you are. Okay, and I can give you a little, tiny URL link in an SMS that you can click on that will get you where you need to go and recognize that, oh yeah, this is coming from a mobile device. We're giving them HTML5. If you wanted to print the darn thing, you can even embed a little button or a link to a PDF version that looked just like the original paper document that you're not getting anymore.
So what you're saying basically is we need to go back and do it.
Absolutely.
I look at different strategies for, but yeah, there's, I mean, everything Scott said was exactly right. I mean, there's different ways of getting to, either doing your own apps or getting to the point where you're doing a mobile-ready device, which, I was kind of showing up there earlier. But you're not just doing it for the mobile iPad. I mean, all these different, you got to do it for the Android, so you got to think through that process. But yeah, it's pretty much, that stuff's pretty standard now in the industry.
So that's not going to happen in a lot of organizations, though, which is why a proposition like Google Play Express is so exciting.
Yeah.
Because we thought finally we gained some traction, right? That's what consumers want. They want to go to one place. Right. So even if Blue Cross Blue Shield did that, do you re-engineer documents? That's great. Omaha Public Power didn't do it. Cox didn't do it, right? That's the problem. There's still all these disconnected.
Well, I think the one place that they go to, I know I go to, is my smartphone. So you talk about going to one place, you really are going to your smartphone. I mean, it's a text message, link to, it may direct you to an HTML5 type layout for your phone, but I mean, to me, that's the one place that you go to. I mean, everybody in here has a smartphone, correct?
Yes, you send an email like Chubb did, I showed you, right? I click here to log in, so you click same thing, click here to log in. First thing they do when they log in, would you like to suppress your paper statement? Yes. Right, and that's a yes to where you get your cursor on it, it keeps moving around the screen, right? So you could suppress the paper, and then that reinforces the, hey, this is now my channel into my EOB, right here.
And the reality is,
And you can read that on your way back from the mailbox. You can look at that. I'm looking at my phone as I got my mail. I got my direct mail. I'm going to throw away under my arm.
you can actually do it without re-engineering your main application. You can do it post-composition and create HTML5 that's responsive. I mean, Bruce Lee originally said it, but content should be like water. You know, it should fit the container that it's destined for. So water, you pour it in a pitcher, it takes the shape of a pitcher. You pour it in a glass, it takes the shape of a glass. Content on the web should be exactly the same way. Should recognize, the target device and should morph in terms of format.
Which is great, but you're not getting a link for an EOB on your smartphone. There's not an insurance provider that does that.
Do you deliver PDF?
You could be the first.
Actually, we have a customer who probably competes with you that delivers EOBs to their members electronically in responsive HTML5 or accessible PDF.
Sounds like a provider machine.
Actually, it's not, because it's all done on secure portals, member portals.
Yeah, that's different than a secure portal, again, which means I'm having to go get versus coming to me. You're just going to another site. That's what we don't want to do, right?
Oh, no, you don't send stuff over email. You absolutely do not send stuff over email.
Send a notice via email to come back to your website.
Right, exactly.
Wants an EOB in the mail.
Yeah.
I want something to look at. I'm kind of liking that you send it in the mail. I mean, it's.
So I do too.
benefits
I get my
more
EOBs
than
in there.
just a bill. It's kind of a big,
There's
annual
some
decision.
new security features coming out and stuff to do exactly what you're talking about. Sorry. There's some new security features around presentment of PDFs through an app that allows you to do exactly what you're asking for. You authenticate it once, biometrics, face recognition, whatever you want to do, and then you're able to then every time that PDF would come, you'd actually open up through the app through a secure method.
And then we're back to this person, I have 10 businesses I do, I transact with, I have to give them all of it.
Well, I didn't say it was going to be easy. I mean, you keep throwing, you said you just wanted a way to do this, and I give you a way, and now you got this other problem. But I think the best, I mean, it's probably a discussion worth having. I'm not the total expert on this because it's fairly new, but I know people that are that could probably have that discussion with you.
But I got 94% of the bank market, so they'd be perfect.
We have a question down here.
So, sounds like your 360 degrees really comes down to principles of user experience, user interface design, and responsiveness. And it is easy to design that way. It's just some people are stuck in the old ways. I'm of that millennial generation, so I have the targets. But with the aspect of from trainings and stuff that I've done, focusing on what is used most widely. More countries, more people, and more places, everyone uses the smartphone. So if you use that as your approach to what you design for first, and then scale it up for a larger stream, and start at your smallest frame point, then you're going to make data accessible, make it easier to use. As for the security portions of the stuff, you'd be surprised that a lot of things are a lot more secure than what the given TLS or 256-bit encryption look at. Looking at that myself, coming from 6 years experience at IBM, I see this side of this stuff. And it's easy. It's just people have to take the approach of where you live for user experience and to the personalization. Because what my generation wants is experience, not having everything tailored to be specific. And whether that's done, you can do that approach through how you're approaching the design and actual application.
Any closing comments?
Thank you for having me. This has been fascinating.
Glad everybody could make it. Thanks for coming.
Really, this was a great turnout. Thanks for the interaction. It was a lot of fun.
A great audience. I want to thank Fiserv again for hosting us, and thank Skip from Explore for putting this on.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. I know, it's been great. Thanks.